Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you can go to officehours.global to find out more what we do. First hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Second hour is usually something we think is a little bit more important, something we'd like to take a little bit more time with. Today, we're going to have the developers from Universe Control on. We're really excited to have them. It's an integral part of what we're using for Office Hours 2.0. And they're going to explain a little bit about the product and show us a little bit and answer your questions. So definitely check that out. Tomorrow, of course, is the long day. We've got education. We don't put that on YouTube, so you have to be on Zoom for that. And then at 10 o'clock, we're going to be all cooking together with Damayanti Gajar, and we're pretty excited about it. It's Dana Jira mixed with aloo fry. And so we're going to be learning to do this and discussing it back and forth. And it's really a lot of fun. So we'll be doing that right after the education hour in the same webinar. So all you have to do is just hang out and you'll see it. I'd highly recommend trying to play along. It's a really interesting, not just that it's really good food, but that it allows us to kind of figure out how we do this kind of collaborative learning process. And then at noon, well, the Belfast Method is back with Todd Reynolds. And so Todd's got some new cameras and we've got a new setup. So it should be a lot of fun. So we'll stay tuned for that. All right, let's jump into the questions. Guy, take it away.
Oh, sir.
First one's coming in from Sky Gleason, and he asks, what bridge are you using for a 2019 MacBook Pro? My J5 is starting to fail.
What do you mean by bridge, Sky?
The adapter that you plug in to the USB-C to plug everything else in. This is a 13 little port extension box that I pull all my other USBs and monitors and things into.
Yeah, you have to be kind of careful. That how many USBs do you have on your MacBook Pro? Is it a four port, 2 port?
Yes, it's a 4-port USB-Cs.
Right. Yeah. So mostly
16-inch.
Yeah. Generally, I mean, I'm using an OWC, the Thunderbolt. Right now, I have a Thunderbolt Pro dock. Thunderbolt 3 Pro dock is what I'm using for that. So that's how I break that out. You just want to be careful of putting cameras into it. Like cameras and audio. Sometimes you can overload the pipe. so I usually try to put those directly into the computer rather than if I can use the other Thunderbolts for my cameras or my audio. I usually do. Go ahead, Alex.
Also, on that Mac, there are 2 Thunderbolt buses, one on the left, one on the right. So don't put everything on one side. Put some on one side and some on the other.
Go ahead, Chris.
I would also mention that I would recommend, especially for some of us that have the more complicated systems, I actually had to draw a map of all the things that were plugged into my iMac Pro, tracing all of the USB ports, because I was getting completely confused and like which things are into this hub and which things are into that hub. So it would make sense probably for most people to do that.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
OWC, I like them. I've been using them for a while. The cables that they make are also pretty darn good. And isn't there a difference between a dock and a hub? This is a dock that we're looking at right now.
I kind of feel like a dock is a larger hub. I think that they just, it's just the hub is like a couple little things, and then a dock is like, okay, we're serious.
Well, there is actually a hub protocol for
Okay.
Thunderbolt 4, which allows you to, have other Thunderbolt 3s coming out of it. But other than that, not really.
Yeah. And generally a dock is more expensive than a hub. A hub is in the $60 to $100 range, and then the dock is $200 or $300 range oftentimes. And so, or $150 to $300. I think the one that I have is probably up to $250 or something like that. But it just does all the things. So it makes it a lot easier. All right, let's jump on to the next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and he asks, AMC Theaters is showing live American football at theaters in select markets. Considering theatrical releases are in 4K resolution, how would they be upscaling the broadcast feed and unwrapping the stereo audio for 5.1?
So the dirty secret is that most theaters are not doing 4K. So most theaters are broadcasting at 1080p. So that's the dirty secret. Dolby does 4K. I actually don't know of any other theaters that do a digital broadcast over 4K. So I don't know. So there's no upscaling required. I would be surprised if they're doing any unwrapping of the stereo for 5.1. I think they're probably just putting the stereo into the right and left channels and letting you watch it. It'd be really cool if they did, but I'm not sure if they're doing that. There are some broadcasts that are experimenting with both 4K, HDR, 5.1, Atmos, all these other things. I don't know if they're going out to broadcasts yet. I know that some of them are in other countries. They are as a kind of a separate feed. But I think that what you're probably just watching is 1080p stereo on a really big screen with all your friends in a theater for a lot of money. so anyway, that's my guess. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Tyler Roberts in Chambersburg, and he asks, for the HuddleCam HD, is there a difference in quality between the HDMI and USB outputs?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I've noticed that the UVC codec, when you use USB, will smash down the color quite considerably. If I send it through my ATEM and I don't use the USB out, if I'm recording into something else that's not smashing the color, the HDMI out is dramatically more saturated and just punchier colors. So there is definitely a huge difference.
John?
Our findings match exactly what Guy just said.
There you go. All right, let's go to the next question.
Next one's in from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. And he says, yesterday I applied for LinkedIn Live and I was approved this morning. How might I use this with Conversations with Tony Mobley?
Don't tell Jeffrey that. I think Jeffrey, it took him like a year to get approved, and Tony gets approved in a day. I think Jeffrey's not going to be happy about that. I think that posting it to LinkedIn makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's a different market. You could simulcast it if you wanted to. So I think that I haven't seen very many LinkedIn activations that had a lot of viewers. So you may not get that much of an uptick, but it's worth experimenting with. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, I think it's great that you're looking at different audiences, and it's a Facebook audience is a certain group of people, and a LinkedIn is it's more like the adult Facebook. Sorry, it's more for business.
Yeah. And I think that the only thing you always have to think about in general when you're splitting up your audience is that you want to have a unified experience as best you can. And so we split it a little bit here between the Zoom audience and folks watching on YouTube. But you want to be careful of doing that too much. I say that, but as we refine Office Hours 2.0, we're going to put it on all the platforms all at the same time. But that's mostly so that as a virtual production group, it's so that we get data. Like what we want is to know how many people are watching on Facebook and how long do they watch versus YouTube. And we have this opportunity to have an apples to apples, like we have the same show across many different platforms, and what kind of responses do we get across those? And so I think that from a data point, that makes sense. In general, I don't do that. I don't simulcast if I don't have to, unless a client forces me to. And the reason I don't do that is because I don't want to, I want to keep my audience together so that I can interact with them, because interaction is the key. So that's the thing that you always want to kind of keep in mind. Next question.
Next one is Alex 40 Goldner in London, UK, and he asks, for those of you that saw the Facebook keynote yesterday, what did you think of the production? And he has a link here.
Go ahead, Alex.
I thought it was nicely ambitious to the extent that they were obviously influenced by Apple. But I think they went a little bit too far, because they essentially require quite a lot of acting from people who couldn't act in terms of transitions, conversations, a bit overly scripted, as if this conversation is happening in front of us and it wasn't planned. But obviously they weren't able to sell that. And the actual framing of some of the camera shots wasn't very good, and they didn't cut together well. They didn't do shot very well, especially during the conversation with Nick Clegg during the kind of greenwashing section. But in general, I see things getting better. It's working quite nicely. I like how they did the ambition of having the sun shining off his shoulder on the rim lighting on the initial part of the show. So they created that virtual world quite nicely, I thought. It's a pity his hair looked like he was made from a Playmobil boy. So he looked a bit odd and strange. But
was it? It looked like, I only got a glimpse of it before it asked me to log in, and then it's sending me a 6-digit code. So I don't know if by the end of this question, if I'll actually be able to log into Facebook, but we'll see. What did it look like? In the glimpse that I saw before, it told me that I couldn't watch anymore. It said that it looked like pretty green screeny, like they produced the whole thing kind of virtually. And I think that kind of leads to why we can assume that Apple doesn't do as much of that as they do, because I didn't think the key looked very good. So what do you say, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it was a bit. They had a fire that was obviously not a real fire that tried to be a fire, but they didn't think of animating the curtains at all, and so there weren't any air movements at all apart from the things they decided to animate in certain backgrounds. So they didn't really think it through in the aspects of what they put in the backgrounds. But hey, at least they're trying. They're trying quite well. So
Yeah,
good.
I think you get to try for a while. I mean, I will say that at a company, one of the top size, the largest companies in the world, you need to stop trying and actually execute. And this has been a problem that they've had for a while. Stop being imaginative. And if you're going to do something that's aggressive, hire ILM. Like literally, I mean, like hire someone that's going to actually execute it at a film quality level, as opposed to kind of looking forced, because it just, especially when you're talking about the metaverse and doing this all like this, when it looks weird, it doesn't help your argument. Like when it's, and I felt like again, I only saw a glimpse and I was like, well, that's weird. So I think that, and Facebook has a hard time not looking weird. And I think that that's the challenge, and I think it undermines their entire argument, because when people have this experience of weird, it's one of the reasons we stay out of virtual backgrounds, is because it looks weird. And so it disconnects the viewer from the speaker. And I think Apple does do some compositing, but I think they do very little of it. And when they do it really, really well. And I think that's the key. What were you saying, Alex?
I think it was generally the whole thing had a feeling of uncanny valley all the way through. Unfortunately, so your subconscious wasn't being fooled, so you felt it a bit eerie. Now, of course, that may be just the nature of their brand. Birth the old one and the new one. It's always going to be like that, but we'll see.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, something that particularly annoyed me was that they had Mark Zuckerberg talking into a portal, but we clearly weren't seeing the video from it. If they're going to put their own product in it, we really ought to see the real output from it.
Right. Yeah, that's when yes, I agree. Like if you're going to show something like it's coming through something, you really have to, at that point, you have to dog food it. Go ahead, John.
I was pleasantly surprised. If you compare yesterday's production versus what Mark generally does, which is sit out on his patio on his laptop on Wi-Fi, this is leap years ahead of that. Yeah. So I was happy to see them taking a step in the right direction.
You go, Jason.
It was certainly well rehearsed and much better kind of like blocked out than previous ones. But if I hear one more tech giant pontificate about things being in their DNA, I'm going to lose it.
Go ahead, Chris.
I saw one very short bit where there was about 4 different shots of Mr. Zuckerberg with 4 different eye lines. And my director's hat was like, where is he looking? Why is there a cut there? And it just seemed really bizarre. And I don't know what the motivation was behind it, but there was just a lot of different angles very quickly, and I had to turn it off. And Mark Zuckerberg's always a little weird.
Yeah, I think that the hard part is always that you just have to do what this we call the kind of keeping our elbows in. I used to wrestle a lot, and you stick your elbows out, you get thrown. And so what I always feel like people need to do when they do a production is to keep their elbows in. Don't do much more than you can do well. And stretch just a little bit. And they stretched a lot, and I think you can see it. Go ahead, Sky.
I'm just curious. I'd love to talk to Goldner about the WebEx experience that happened recently, because it's, again, a tech company trying to sell you something. And these are the different styles. And of course, styles come and go. And it had a similar filmic quality in certain portions of it. And so I'd be very curious to have a creative side-by-side with you, Goldner.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Kenneth Jones in Seattle, and he says, I did my first hybrid meeting. It was, say it with me, a dumpster fire. How to balance, open quote, them, close quote, and open quote, us, or is it even possible without feedback?
Kenneth, were you running it, or were you just at it?
No, unfortunately, I was running it.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
I can hardly
sorry
wait
to hear
till
that.
next week.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, I certainly don't think anything's sort of magically going to happen. All these improvements are going to take, first of all, time, but then also, observate. It's going to take open-minded people. Observation is going to take conversation and things like that. And depends what environment you're in, but in the corporate enterprise space, just taking a step back over the years, and in my experience, I've seen people at work, people in situations complain about the craziest things. And they eventually sort of go to one approach is that they go to HR about it and have some kind of conversation. I think it won't be long before people in enterprise, employees, start doing that, saying, look, this is terrible. I'm being subjected to bad audio thing. This is having an effect. I think it may just be one approach, but I think that will start happening.
Good, Sky.
Well, I think from day one, Alex's comment was are you putting people in the kiddie table? And so to acknowledge that there are two different people, or two different locations, and to have your leadership continue to acknowledge that I'm talking to you at home and I'm also talking to you here. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's also a thing that we're learning to have to, live with.
Go ahead, Alex.
I think Unilever were doing quite well in 2018 and 2019, in which they used, quote, unimportant people as a small audience of 15 or 20, and then people were all over the world in their hundreds and thousands while watching a show. So it was not too bad for the leadership, supposedly called leadership, to be able to kind of know that they should be looking mainly at the cameras. And what they actually do every once in a while during breaks and when BTs were playing is they'd actually just reassure and explain what was going to the audience in the room, because they didn't actually get the real show. So everyone was always paying attention that the real show was out there, and really the people in the room were just helping make that real show work. But on the other hand, these days, it might be quite nice if you gave everybody in the room noise cancelling headphones. So they actually had to hear the audio that everyone was hearing, so that they wouldn't have little local conversations or ask questions or talk to people in the room so that other people couldn't hear because they weren't mic'd. So noise cancelling headphones for the people in the room to bring them down or up to the kiddie table, maybe.
Go ahead, Chris.
We talk all the time about how if we sounded and looked better, we'd be taken more seriously. And to us, we've spoken about it so much, it's second nature. I think it would be really interesting. There's so many different production groups, companies, and producers. I think it'd be really interesting to write a script for a demonstration about what Zoom fatigue is, why people don't like being on a call for too long, and how to remedy it, and then get dozens of people to make the same video with their own little style, and just flood YouTube with people saying, how to, and we SEO the heck out of it, how to make a better Zoom call, how to, improve your presence, whatever it is, and just have all these videos out there with the exact same script and the same examples, but produced by different people.
I think it could work. I think one of the other things that I'm hoping as we launch 2.0, we're also going to move this off of my YouTube page and onto the page there. And there I want to put some of these resources. And then what I think would be also useful is us to tweet, and then all of us retweet it and tweet towards it, and just really trying to push a lot of energy towards it so that people, across all of our communities really start to really think about this. I think that I will say, and I've said this before 100 times, is that you put one person in the room in front of a speaker, and you're fighting a million years of evolution. Like, that they're going to look at that person. They're going to relate to any person that their lower brain can see in the room. And so you have to put them on screens. You can put the participants on screens and let them look at them. I do that with you. So I couldn't do this show without all of you in front of me. So whether it's using something like Canvas, which is getting put up in Monterey, or putting up big screens or something, you want them to see the audience, but that audience should be completely digital. Now, if you want people to be part of that experience, they want to have dinner together, they want to have cocktails, they want to do that. Put a big LED wall where you used to have a speaker. Put the speaker in another room. Let them present. Now they're presenting on that big screen to everyone in that room. Everyone in the room has that physical thing, and they also see the speaker. But everybody has the same experience. That's what we tend to call a digital first experience, which is that we care about the digital audience more, or we prioritize that digital audience because you're paying attention to the physical audience is excluding 99% of your addressable market in the world all the time, every time. And that's conservative. It's probably 99.99999% of your addressable market. And so, and having them feel at all like they're less than has them, is basically, it's a hybrid event is worse than doing no event at all, because people will come to it as a hybrid event virtually and they'll have a bad experience and then you can't get them back. I went to a Sony event that Sony had some launch event. I went to it. It was a dumpster fire. I was like, well, and then the next Sony event came up and I was like, no, I'm not going to bother. It's because I just know that they don't know what they're doing. And so you can't, and that's Sony, and that's someone who, and it was just a disaster. It was confusing. I couldn't figure it out. And you have to think about this really, really carefully and make sure that, because the worst thing is you can't get people back. It's why we got this far with office hours, where I don't really push it really hard. I talk about it a little bit here and there. I talk about it on a Mac break, but I don't push it really hard because we're figuring it out. And I don't want to try to bring 50,000 people to come see it when it's still a work in progress, and so we're getting very close to it not being a work in progress. To get to your technical question about the feedback, that is something that you need. There's a couple different ways to handle it. One is that if they're going to wear labs, then you need to have a seasoned mixer that understands what they're doing, and you have to have Dugan auto mix. So you put the virtual audience on a Dugan basically the two things pulling against each other are the mics that are in the room and the virtual presenters, and one will push the other one down. And then you have to tune it. It's not something you just turn on. You have to sit there, and there's a lot of rehearsal to tune that. The cheaper way to do it, or the easier way to do it, if you don't have that, is SM58s. They have a high off-axis rejection, and it will allow you to kind of sort that out without having the technical skills to do it. But those are the ways to get rid of the echo, or the returns that are endemic, with this process. And then the other thing you want to do is make sure that you have the person on the far end wear an IFB that will clean it up. Alex, real quick.
Yeah, just to say that unfortunately people still manage large organizations in the 20th century sort of way. So actually they like the idea of the people not being there on the kiddie table. In HR, people actually use that as a motivation for people to get in the room, which is very sad, and it's still going to be around for a while. 5 or 10 years, and then it'll be gone. Hybrid events are already dead in the water. They're just the event companies don't know it yet. They're not going to continue. This is just a crippled, weird way that we're going to limp through the next couple of years because we don't know any better. And more people aren't going to go to the physical events. They're just going to keep on diving on attendance. I mean, you're looking at all the InfoComm, from what I heard, was sparsely populated. So you're going to see the same thing at IBC. You're going to see the same thing at NAB next year. They filled up their time. They're not going to keep traveling. They're not going to, this is, physical events and the way we knew them is gone. We'll limp through and try to force it through, but it's over. And hybrid events are worse than physical events. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Sky Gleason in Seattle, Washington, and he asked, to attend the show Hour of Happy tonight, would you rather watch a stand-up comedy act from a breakout room or Kyle and guest mixologist pinned together in the main room?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, I see this as a basic television or film blocking situation. Anytime you have two people looking in the same direction, then put them together next to each other, that kind of stuff, or put them even on one screen. That's if characters are going to be on one screen, then we want them looking in the same direction. In Zoom, we're always looking in the correct direction because we're always looking towards our cameras. Putting someone in another room or putting them somewhere else and switching between them, well, then that we want to not be straight on with two faces. We want to be between the faces.
Go ahead, Rupert. No. The only thing I'll say is that we try to keep people from ever putting two people in the same room if we can, because the audience is immediately pulled out of it. They're immediately, we have this unique opportunity right now, like when we're doing this, is that the audience gets to look at everybody straight on at the same time. When we have anybody in the same room together, we're excluded from that opportunity again. We spend so much time trying to put cameras in places where we can get the whole face and we don't get a profile. No, we don't have to worry about that at all. Next question.
Also, another one from Sky Gleason, and he asks, on a 2019 MacBook Pro 16-inch, which port do you plug your bridge into?
I plug mine into my left far connection. I believe that is the one that takes the power the most effectively. I can't remember which bus is doing which, but I believe that the power is the premium. It is one side does it better. You'll get a lower fan rate, but I believe it's the left side is the right side, but is the correct side. Left side is not the right side. I believe that's the correct answer, but I'm not 100% sure. But it may be that I do it out of muscle memory because that's where my MagSafe was. Not that I was bitter. Next question.
Matthew asks, during events, what equipment and personnel do you have backups or redundancies for, and how do you keep costs and scope reasonable while also being prepared for problems?
Go ahead, Rupert.
Well, it could be anything, and it's all relative, and it all depends largely on the needs of your client, the needs of the project. The redundancies, what redundancies you built in can be, a private matter for you, or that can be something you discuss with your client. Be open with them. If they, want a certain level of redundancy, then you have to build that in, and that's a conversation you can have with them, and they can make some choices of how much of that they want to buy into. You can be prepared for problems in your event, but also part of the calculation is, are you prepared for the reputation problems if something goes wrong to your client or to you? Are you prepared for not getting the next job? How many of those risks are you prepared to take? And if you can put some weight or some arbitrary numbers to those things, you can start doing a calculation and just let it add up on paper and make decisions that way.
Right. George?
This is a vast subject, so I would start with, as Rupert mentioned, you're always going to take the fall. One thing I would, records, even if the client doesn't pay for a second backup record, you should always try to put those in place, because it goes wrong, you're going to be blamed for it. Playback, computers, you need to try to factor in all those things for backups, because things can go wrong. Also, whether it's a small or large show, I feel like if you're going to have more than 4 lav mics, you should always have an A2 and leave the A1 to focus on the project. You could get away with a V1 just doing a few tasks, but the A1 needs to focus on the show. That's the input I'm going to give for those.
Yep. Roscoe?
Yeah, you have to ask yourself what will take the show down completely versus what will just limit, cameras or angles you have or choices you have, and then experience. Primarily, you learn over time which piece of equipment are likely to fail, which pieces, and that's where you pay to get somebody who's done it multiple times in, because they're going to identify what happens when you go to a Marriott hotel and this happens, or their experience.
One of the things that we do is a lot of our crew is multi-purpose, which means they may be a camera operator, but they also know how to switch or color. They may be an audio engineer, but they also know how to do a couple other electrical, and so we still give them all of the same positions, and we still have those positions represented. But if one was a little late, or if somebody gets sick, there's somebody else on the crew that can actually step in for them if needed. We also try to keep our crews about 40 to 60% at their capacity. So we have enough people that we're not at 110%. And a lot of people, especially in virtual events, have gotten into a habit of understaffing. And that's in itself creates just a whole bunch of problems. And the problem is the thing that goes wrong will not be the thing that, that came in last, that wasn't handled. That thing not being handled destabilizes the entire system. And then finally, one of the big advantages of owning equipment is that you can put in redundancies without talking to the client about it, because you're not renting the equipment. And so the advantage of having, like for us bringing a switcher actually meant we were bringing 2 switchers. We were charging you the same amount of money that you would have rented that switcher for, but you were actually getting a primary and a backup, and you were getting a primary and backup of the video hub, and you were getting a primary and backup of, lots of the bits and pieces were primary and backup. So you're actually getting, as a client, you're getting 2 for the price of 1 as a rental. But what it does is it protects us from it ever, to the point that was made earlier, from it failing. And it still happens. I mean, like, you still have failures, but you want to try to do everything you can to minimize those. Rupert?
I just wanted to add the point that if you're coming up against new clients and new projects, and they're wanting to cut too many corners and not really want to cut it down to where it's risky, some of those situations you have to step away from and say, this is, I don't want to take those risks, and I don't want to get involved in that.
In writing, a lot of times a week out or 2 weeks out or something, if we see things aren't coming together, we will send an email out that says, we recommend that you cancel or reschedule this event, and we can figure out how to tie that up for you. If we haven't put too much into it, we'll try to keep that number as low as possible, but we would rather tell you that you can't get it done than plow into the ground trying to get it done. And so usually what happens there, if you send it out early enough, is that the client or the partner tightens up and suddenly everything goes out the other end. But you want to give them enough time that says, hey, we either have to tighten all this stuff up and pull it together, or we need to cancel. And that's I don't do it very often, but that helps a lot. Chris?
At the beginning of COVID, we had a client come in with a under thought out project. And we had one meeting, and then we had another meeting. And in that meeting, we backed out of the edit because they didn't have enough resources and time and money to make it happen. And they had not made any progress on decision making between the first and second meeting. And although that act felt a little scary, like, you don't want to do that to a client. Because, essentially we said, yeah, this is going to be a disaster and we don't want to put our name on it, so we're not going to do it. Right. But as it turned out, that client has their spend with us over the next year dramatically increased. They gave us bigger jobs, they leaned on us more, and they started listening to the advice we were giving them. And so those kind of things can really turn to your advantage.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I think I remember with live events, there's a weird thing that happens about 3 or 4 days before the first day when people are going to be on site, or around that time, when they start realizing how many hours there are left for the people to get the various things done. And sometimes clients can kind of start realizing that their requests actually have to fit into the physical reality of somebody having to do something about it. Maybe in certain departments, obviously in my side of things would be animation and graphics, and then they realize that's what they're asking for. But the other thing is, there's a good phrase to use is, that's a good idea, but it might put the show in danger. Yeah. That really gets their attention if you say you're going to put the show in danger.
No, absolutely. Next question.
Next one's from Douglas Carmichael, and he asks, AMC Theaters offers live Metropolitan opera. Wouldn't it be harder to mix/cut opera versus a pure concert because of the sheer number of players on stage? A simple comedy troupe in Belfast was hard enough versus the musicians we've had in the past.
I think you're right. It's definitely a lot. But when you look at a real concert, and the Belfast one is a concert, but when you look at one at a large stage, so the Belfast one is a small theater, a large stage. We did an event a couple weeks ago that were as a large stage that was over 90 inputs. It was coming out of 2 Digicos. And so, because we thought, well, they only have 56 outputs from the Digicos, so how bad can it be? We didn't think that they would use 2. So anyway, all of these shows, as they get larger, can get very, very complex and very difficult. And a lot of it has to do with grouping and how you group those mics and inputs together. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, this is where a lot of rehearsal pays off. We just finished off a musical. I took 3 sophomores who had never switched or done camera before, but you give them a week to watch the show over and over again, and they will come up with some pretty good shots. And professional camera people, even better, I'm sure.
Next question.
Another one in from Douglas Carmichael, and he asks, when blocking cameras for opera/theater events, how do you manage position so that the actors/singers do not feel uncomfortable with them in their faces? How would you manage camera cabling so it's not intrusive on stage or causes a trip hazard?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
This is also where you use what we just did with this. We did a device play. We used the dress rehearsal to actually put cameramen onto the stage right near the camera. It's the Hamilton method, I'm going to call it. This is what they did when they released Hamilton to the public. They had days where the camera people were actually on stage, where the actors could actually be frozen or interacted with, and they weren't in danger, of being in a live performance. Well, it is a performance, and then when you actually, go into post. That's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, and remember that a lot of times we see those close-ups, those are really long lenses, so they're not anywhere near the actors when they do it. So that helps as well. Next question.
Next one in is from George Kennedy Jr. in Washington, D.C., and he says, I just received an X32. How is everyone controlling theirs? iPad, X-Touch, Mac, or PC?
Go, Jason.
First, welcome to the club. My X32 rack came in DOA, so I chickened out and I could not handle it without the faders. I am too used to them. So my favorite way is with the faders, but also with the with the iPad version, the iOS version on an M1 Mac.
Did it not start up? Not power up?
Just a completely blank screen, like none of the lights turned on. It's completely dead.
We've had that with an X32. We think it's a power supply.
Chip shortage.
Yeah,
They're just not putting them in anymore.
They didn't put the chips in. Like
they didn't put the chips in.
They didn't put the chips in. Go ahead, George.
So, Alex, thanks for mentioning this a couple of months ago. I was able to source this from the folks over at Sweetwater. Great team over there. Brian Maddox pretty much stepped me through the use case for this. So I got the rack version also. It's going to be able to sit in the rack. I take with everything moving to Dante, and I have a bunch of dongles on my M1s. This is all going to be able to integrate nicely. And I just wanted to get some feedback on what folks were doing. I know it's a heavy lift in getting this set up, but that shouldn't be a big issue. But I just wanted to find out what folks are using. I think I'm going to get the X-Touch because I just want to make sure that I could use the controller for vMix in the cloud also. So I don't know if I could separate them out when I want to do the cloud event. So in either case, I'm probably going to get the X-Touch down the road.
Yeah. We've always used the X-Touches with the controller with the rack. I mean, that's generally how we set those up. And then the second is usually the Mac software to talk to it. Next question.
Next one is Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. And he asks, I think a number of people have mentioned or made quick YouTube videos on Zoom best practices, like quick rundowns of no Wi-Fi, good audio, quick lighting tips, camera position, and so on. Can anyone recommend or point to any favorites on YouTube?
Go ahead, John.
My favorite is the one that Jeff Francis made, and I'll put the link in Mukana.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
This is exactly what I was saying earlier. We need to write that script and have all of us make this exact same video.
Yeah. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, yeah, I got the link in first, but they already nailed it. Jeff's video is pretty good. 4 minutes long.
Absolutely. Next question.
Danny Law, Malaysia says, ATEM Mini Extreme ISO video setting at 1080p 50 Hz, only showing Mac Mini second output, same as 1080p 50 Hz on HDMI input 1 and 2, not showing and occasionally flickers for a second or two on other inputs when plugged in. What am I overlooking?
Go ahead, Jason.
This is a tough one. My immediate thought when I read this the first time was that somehow you had gen locked to your first input, and for some reason that was causing your switcher to not
I think that'll happen with the
recalibrate.
Extreme, right?
Right.
Yeah. Roscoe?
Yeah, I'd swap out cables to start with. You never know. Sometimes cables just work well, and HDMI tends to be a little bit. But secondarily, I'm trying to remember what the native frame rate was of a Mac Mini. We ran it into a video assist and ran that, and I'm just thinking try 60 if you can. I'm not. You're in Malaysia, and so I'm sure maybe 50 is your choice for a reason. But maybe if you run the ATEM Mini at a division of 60, you might find that clears up, because the Mac Mini has its own kind of frame rate out the back.
Try using inputs 2 and 3. Don't put anything into 1. See if it works. Next question.
Nolan Morris in Minneapolis asks, anybody using a 10 gigabit NAS over Wi-Fi 6? Any recommendations for switchers/routers, if so?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
I've never been impressed by anything over Wi-Fi, especially when real bits are involved. Yeah, I don't have a suggestion, but other than the worst Ethernet is always better than the best Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi. I don't have enough experience with Wi-Fi 6 to say anything. I think you stumped us. We don't get stumped very often, but this one we haven't done yet. Next question.
Another one in from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas, and he says, yesterday I asked about Zoom Gallery 48 view on iPad Pro. I double-checked the documentation. The Zoom articles do definitely say 48 participants at once on the 12.9-inch 2021 iPad Pro dated May 2021. What gives? Is this a hidden feature?
It must be a setting somewhere in the iPad that we just don't have set. So there's probably a flag. The iPad interface to get to the preferences and settings is painful. So it could be just that it's hidden in the iPad settings, but I haven't seen it. So
wouldn't it be 49?
I don't know.
7 by 7.
48,
No.
49.
You got a 4 by 3. you've got a 4:3 screen on an iPad, so maybe the different aspect ratio means a different number of participants.
Instead of 7:7, it goes 6:8 maybe, or something like that. It looks like more than that on the screen there. It looks like 8:8. It looks like 64 on that screen. So it's very odd. No, it's 7. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to go through
6:8 there.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll have to take a look. Yeah, I don't know. Next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle, Washington asks, 2019 MacBook Pro, when should I move the OS from Big Sur to Monterey?
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, in my case, on my 2019 MacBook Pro, I would say as soon as everything that I need absolutely works on Monterey +1. Like, always just give it a little bit of fudged room.
Yeah, Alex?
I would guess Easter. That's my first thought. But then, of course, have a separate partition that you don't start up from, and then install it on there, and then try it every once in a while. Try a day in which you're not doing any production work, but in practice, let other people test it.
Yeah, Michael?
I don't put it on my production machine yet. I'm waiting for 12.2, 12.3, somewhere in that range.
Right.
And then I would do it on my laptop. I did upgrade to Monterey, and it's okay. In the audio world, Eventide and Waves are ready for Monterey, but some of the other ones are not yet ready.
Go ahead, George.
Sky, I've always been that guy to jump the gun and load it up right away. Wait a few months before you do it, and make sure all your production apps are ready.
I have the advantage of having some Mac Minis that I've already put on Monterey, and they work great. I am running into one app after the other that breaks. So, there'll be something that comes up and suddenly doesn't work, and then you have to do a little research and find out, oh, that's not ready for Monterey yet. So there's definitely, I wouldn't put it on a production machine. Of course, my machine that's sitting in front of me right now is still on Catalina. So I'll get to Big Sur in a month or two, and I tend to run really slowly. I have one computer that's on Mojave, and then this main computer's on Catalina, and then I've started to go to Monterey here. So I've kind of skipped Big Sur altogether. But there's also a bunch of apps that I can't run without Monterey. So that's been the other side of things, is that you need it to move forward. So I will say that the Mac Minis are great. If you can afford a Mac Mini that just is your test machine and does a lot of other things and offloads renders and so on and so forth. I mean, even the 8 gig is a pretty amazing little machine, just to have it that can do a little extra work. I have 2 of them here, and I have them running almost all the time. Like, I need to do a resolve render. I need to do, and it's because the old Mac Minis could never do any of this. The M1s are just an entirely different world, where you can sit there and go, I'm going to do a Cinema 4D render. I'm going to do a motion render, 8K render. I'm going to do a resolve. And now my main machine, I just keep working, and then I just have these other machines just running running my renders for me. It's a pretty luxurious experience, to have a bunch of machines that are just sitting there. They're tiny, they're quiet, and they just keep working. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Nick Batt in the UK, and he asks, anyone with an M1 MacBook Pro found the camera notch has obscured the menu bar? Any way to work around that?
Go ahead, Jason.
No, I actually haven't, unless you have a metric ton of things up there. I can go to the desktop, and what you'll see is that the pointer at the top actually kind of, it's weird. It fades off in a strange way, but I've got a fair number of icons there, and none of them are in any way obscured.
I believe that there is a setting, and I just read about it. I don't have the laptop, so I haven't had to do it yet. There is a setting that says it basically will bring your entire desktop down below the notch. So it'll just leave a black area at the top. So it'll squeeze the whole desktop underneath your notch. So if you have that issue, there is a setting somewhere. I think it's
there. It is dock and menu bar.
Yeah, yeah. So dock and menu bar, and so it'll pull it all in, and so then you won't have to worry about it. So that's the workaround. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, there's in Get Info as well. You can say to an app by app, you can say scale it down, and it just scales it down inside that area, the whole screen, so the app doesn't know it's been scaled down. The other thing is, if you're using menus, then your mouse pointer will kind of float through past the camera housing. So menus are going to be fine in all apps. That should be fine. But it's more that your menu bar items, the little stuff that goes from the top right hand corner, they don't know about this, and they will be hidden behind the camera housing unless you use something like one of the menu bar handlers to kind of deal with those things.
Great. Next question.
Next one's in from Rupert McRae, and he says, what is a good way to publish pages to a website with publicly accessible URLs, for example, that can be linked to without passwords or walls, but avoid those pages eventually being indexed by a search engine?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I just want to ask Rupert, just if he can expand upon it a bit, because I read this question 3 or 4 times to try to understand what the issue is, whether it was permalink settings or not using post name, and if you're using WordPress. And I need a bit more information.
So,
if you could.
So it's kind of like I'm envisioning something like publishing, equivalent to publishing an unlisted YouTube video. You can send a link to somebody. I'm not thinking of videos, I'm just thinking content. You send a link to somebody, they can access it one click, no problem. But eventually that won't turn up on Google. That's just what I'm looking for.
Go ahead, Dennis.
So robots.txt can do that. Basically, there's a format that you specify the particular URLs you don't want the spiders to see, but obviously they have to honor that. So technically, it's still possible for some search engines to find it if they're not obeying the rules.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Danny Law in Malaysia, and he says, I'm streaming out from the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO at the highest stream setting to YouTube just fine. Cache indicator showing okay. When streaming to restream, ATEM cache numbers started to go up. Why is this?
Go ahead, Jason.
It most likely has to do with the way that Restream by default will let you pick your stream to link. So I would try one that isn't necessarily in Malaysia. For example, in the US, I live in Albuquerque, and sometimes LA is better, and sometimes Dallas is better, and sometimes New York is better. It's really just a matter of, the day and time that you're broadcasting.
Yeah, this has to do with ingest congestion. It means that too many people are streaming to the same ingest point. In Malaysia, they probably only have a handful of ingest points that they have available for restream. I'm sure that YouTube has plenty. So it's probably not as big of a market for restream. And so as a result, you can actually overload the ingest point. And so then you'll start to back up it'll start to cache back because it's not being able to go out as fast. The receiving end is not able to receive as fast as the sending end. And that's part of how, with RTMP, it's constantly talking back and forth saying, hey, I can't take those packets right now. So that's actually most likely what's happening. To Jason's point, if you pick another ingest point, especially one in the United States or something like that, you may find that it's more stable. It sounds crazy, but it may be more stable. Next question.
Graham in Northern Ireland asks, what tech is on your Black Friday watch list, and what would be the first thing to add if you were just using your MacBook Pro's webcam and internal mic?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I do is get a microphone that you can get closer to your mouth, whether it be something like I'm wearing, which is the old Polson, in a fairly inexpensive way to get a mic close to your mouth. But there are options all the way up to SM58s, all the way up to professional mics. So that would be my first thing I'd go with.
Next question.
Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham says, last night's Thursday Night Football, Fox's broadcast looked great, but Amazon Prime's version color was so dull, hazy, that it looked like a different game. Arizona Cardinals versus red was almost brown. Why would NFL allow such a difference?
My guess is that they were trying to stream in HLG or HDR10. So when things look really drab and dark, it means that what you're watching is, and what they didn't do is have an SDR way to manage it, so that it probably looked great in HDR, and they might have built an SDR, but what happened is that your manifest, the player that you had, didn't grab onto the right video, and basically if you interpret PQ or HLG as 709, so if you take a 2020 or 2020 holder, and then in the color spaces of HDR10 or HLG, and you look at them as 709, they'll look like you put coffee over them. Like they're very low contrast and darker. So if that's what happened, most likely some people saw it in HDR, but not everyone. And so this is one of the biggest gotchas with HDR streaming and with Atmos streaming and everything else is the manifests, because the players themselves get a little list that just says this is what's available to you, and they're not very smart, and they just grab onto the wrong one. And especially if you're on a PC, or Android, you'll have more trouble than you will on a Mac. Apple's been doing the same thing and pushing HDR for a long time, and all of these things, and so they tend to handle those HLS manifests more effectively, or Dash. So that's probably what happened there. It's probably on your side, and they probably allowed it. They probably looked at it. They're going to have to go back and figure out why the manifests weren't read correctly. What you have to end up doing in the end is, in my opinion, is you build separate manifests for the different players. So the player says, I'm on Chrome, or I'm on this, or I'm on that. And you, in the cloud, you actually build another manifest that's just for that target. And a lot of people try to avoid that because it's not supposed to be that way, but it's the way it works. Next question.
Next one's in from Tlaloc Miguel Lopez Waterman in Astoria, New York. And he says, why does live 4K not come in Chrome on YouTube? Watching the stream on Safari so I can turn on 4K.
I have a feeling that it has to do with with resource usage on the Mac of Chrome. Chrome is incredibly resource intensive on the Mac, and I think that it may decide that it can't do 4K in that area. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, Alex, you mentioned putting the virtual audience on a Dugan auto mix. Wouldn't a Dugan need isolated audio from each virtual participant?
You can put it to get. Oh, go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
I figured you might want to take this, but yeah, there's X and Y. So a Dugan auto mix is basically, how wide does it have to get in order to switch channels, and then how much weighting do you want to put against that channel? So no, in this case, of course, it'd be ideal to have isolations, but at the end of the day, you're always going to sub them into one mix, and you let that make your decision.
Yep. Next question.
Steve Bodinier in Colorado Springs asked, a few weeks ago, Alex and someone else mentioned HDMI matrix in passing. I'm looking for recommendations for an 8x8 or a 16x16 matrix.
Go ahead, Jason.
Monoprice.
Yeah, I'm using an 8x8 Blackbird. Works real well. Next question.
Next one's from Alex 4D Goldner in London, UK, and he says, for those of you that saw the Facebook keynote yesterday, what did you think of the announcements about the metaverse?
Real quick, Alex.
I liked how they were talking about giving tools for people to be creators in terms of creative people as well as the technological side. Apple have already done it with the Reality Composer, and so maybe it will actually push Apple to explain what they've already done. So generally, it wasn't so bad what they were talking about in the metaverse.
Go ahead, John.
I'm super bearish on this. I think that it reminded me of Second Life, what I was watching yesterday. And their engineering guy said that they had to get through about 12 different innovations to make this happen. I think it's a long way off.
Yeah. George?
I'm just going to say time will tell.
The thing is that I just think that what we have found here is that authentic communication over video is pretty effective. And the uncanny valley, the problem really is that as you get closer and closer to reality with those avatars, it'll get weirder and weirder. And I think it's going to take a decade at least for that to really sort itself out. Next question.
Next one is in from Christopher Sabato in Salem, Oregon. And he says, watching the Sabres at Ducks NHL on MSG, when switching to a camera along the boards, they also switch to an ambient mic closer to the action and much louder. Is this a new trend? Seemed like a mistake at first, but happened throughout the game.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Check, please. Yeah. It's very hard to see the puck, but bodies being slammed against the boards is a exciting part of hockey. So that's why they have a mic there.
I think they want to try to make you feel like you're there. Next question.
Next one's in from James Brooks in New York, and he says, I've been having occasional video glitches in OBS. C100 to ATEM to OBS. Laptop is a Ryzen 7 with NVIDIA. Any thoughts on the cause or how to correct it? Thanks.
I don't have an answer for that one. We got stumped. All right. Sorry about that. Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, says, I noticed this morning that the YouTube chat extremely active. Is that new, or did I just miss this before?
I think this has to do with the fact that we're in an article in PC Mag. So we just have more people coming by to see what's going on there. So if you're on YouTube, hi. Next question.
Next one's in from Graham in Northern Ireland, and he says, should I upgrade from Resolve Studio 17 to 17.4.1, 2017 MacBook Pro, 2.9 gigahertz i7, 16 gigs of RAM, and a Radeon Pro 560 with the 4 gig graphics card?
Go ahead, Alex, real quick.
I would guess yes. I don't see people complaining about bug fix upgrades to Resolve, so go for it.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
I would guess it's not going to make a big difference. The 17.4 upgrade was for the M1s, and the 0.1 upgrade was for the M1 Pro and Maxes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I with Resolve, I tend to upgrade pretty quickly. I find that they're pretty good at having something, having something pretty stable from the gate, out of the gate. So I probably upgrade. I usually upgrade almost as fast as they do, because usually they're adding features and improvements that are worth it. All right. We're going to change subjects. So as a lot of you know, that we're working on Office Hours 2.0, and we've got a myriad of apps from Isadora to Mix Effect Pro to SPX, and so there's a lot of different pieces of software. One of the pieces of software that's building our entire interface on how we interact and how the user is going to actually interact with the edit system is Universe Control. So we thought it would be great to have the developers from Universe come on and talk a little bit about it and answer some of your questions. We have Max Zornak and Tim Kamenik that are joining us here from Universe. And Max and Tim, welcome. It's good, really good to have you here.
Thank you very much for having us. It's a pleasure.
Hey, welcome.
Tell us a little bit about how Universe, how did you get started in building Universe? How old is it?
Okay, well, Universe, in 2012, Robin and Peter, the two founding fathers, were on a job and were looking for a way to control multiple devices from one interface. Well, surely, like all of you, they often face the challenge of operating many devices simultaneously at the live events. And there was just too many different protocols, too many devices to manage. And so the idea ground that there has to be a better way to operate these devices without running around and struggling to control all of them. With only 10 fingers, it's difficult to control the many simultaneously processors for a show. So, and after a long research, they couldn't find a proper product which fits to their needs. And they started to developing a solution themselves. Got started with just one media server, watch out. They wanted to create a control for all media servers. And the goal was to combine many commands with just one button. And of course, the user should be able to do this without learning another scripting language.
And so tell us a little bit about how Universe actually works.
Universe is a control software which connects a wide range of devices and protocols for the AV challenges. You can execute single predefined commands or combine multiple commands by using logic nodes. Processes can be carried out automatically and time controlled. And all this completely codeless without node-based or with a node-based programming. So it's very easy to use and it's just a few steps to create your own project. Further on, it offers a remote control. So Universe comes with a web interface to hand over control from any device with a web browser.
Well, and one of the things that's really powerful for us is that it is something that's on any web browser, and we can design it. So we can design exactly what we need.
Yeah, this is one of the key features. So the graphical flexibility of Universe interfaces can be customized to fit every CD guideline. And also this process to get this web interface is more or less also done by creating your project, creating your buttons, creating your it's a side by side.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of devices? It seems like it's a very, very wide range of devices that you actually talk to.
Currently we are supporting more or less around 200 devices and protocols and growing from day by day. If you need a special feature or device that is not included yet, feel free to contact us. We will customize Universe for your individual project. Universe and the software architecture was designed to fit to nearly every specific use case.
Now, when you do that, are you going out and looking at the protocol? Do you look at each piece of hardware or each piece of software that you want to interact with and then try to find the way to interact with that API?
Yeah, well, the customers come to us. Well, they told us what they will need. There's a new device, or there's a new protocol, or they just have an idea about what they would like to do, and yeah, then we will find the right solution. Yeah.
And do you have anything that you can show us? Do you want to walk us through the interface a little bit?
Yes, of course. Well, there are plenty of projects which we are very proud of. But maybe I will hand over to Tim, and he can give you a short live demo, run through the workflow, and give you some insights.
Fantastic. And while you're watching, of course, for our producers that are watching, please throw your questions into Makana. We'll get to them after we do the demo. Go ahead, Tim.
So, hi there.
Hey there.
I shared my screen. I hope you're with me. And great. So this is Universe. You open up an empty project, and this is how it looks. Just to give you a quick overview on how we set up a project, probably the first thing to do is to head down to the Devices tab. We have the categories of devices that are integrated into Universe. We have the media servers. We have some displays, projectors, so all kinds of devices. And for my little demo, I have a DMX slide standing behind me, and I will add the Open DMX, which is a small USB to DMX interface. And usually for every device, you have the properties here. The Open DMX by Entech doesn't have a lot of settings to set up. And now I can just drag a fader onto my stage here. This is where I built the interface. And now I will select the fader. Universe switches over to the Commands tab, and I can add my Entech device here. And now when I move the fader, I hope you see it in the background. There's some red light coming up. So I'm now controlling channel number 1 on the DMX. What we are now doing is that you can not only put one command here, like the Entech DMX, but you can, for example, you drag a watchout device here, and you can also set an input in watchout to control layer opacity with the exact same fader. So yeah, you can put many commands behind one control. Yeah, that's the basic workflow. We have the stages. As Max said before, a stage is the entity that you can share with the web interface. So in this case, I will switch on the web interface. My browser opens up. I will have to drag it to the other screen. So this is the web interface in my browser, and I can control the DMX from here, and I can share this link to anyone who should be able to control this.
And when you share that link, where is that hosted for that control? Is it something that you're hosting to? When you're sharing that link, is it a link back to your computer, or is it a link? Is there something in between? So that's and you could theoretically put that. Of course, what we're doing is putting it in the cloud.
Yes. So the Universe application running on my machine here is hosting the website, is hosting the web interface, and of course now you need to do all the network setup and the firewall setup to be able to access it from another machine, or if you are running it in the cloud, from any external machine.
Right. And then you can, as you talked about that, you have that's just one DMX, but you could, against that, connected to that, you could have a lot of other behaviors that are attached to that simple slider.
Yes. Maybe let's go to the example of a button, where you would define presets for your streaming setup, and you can simply put your atom on there. You can put your PTZ camera control on there. You can put your ArtNet lighting connector on there, and then you can push the button, and all the devices that are connected will go to the desired preset.
Right.
And so we combine many functions and many commands in one button or one fader.
That's great. Do you have any other examples? Do you have anything?
Yes.
Yeah. This is great. This is a great start to see how it all ties together.
Yes, just to see how the workflow is. See, I think just takes a moment to load up. This is a project we did just recently, where we build a universe project to control like a brand space with lots of exhibits, so PCs, displays, audio. The Behringer X32 is in this setup as well, and for the client we have designed a simple web interface. So this is how it looks
So this
in
is
the browser.
And this is really cool. So basically you're able to build a look and feel that really makes them feel like it's their design. It's not some kind of just rough kind of here's a button, but you're able to load those background images and really create something that's more client facing.
Yes. So Universe is running on a PC in the rack, and our client has a few iPads where they can control the music volumes in the shop. They can switch inputs for displays and control contents on the displays. And this is what they are seeing on their iPad.
And it could be an iPad. It could be theoretically even a phone, right? Anything that can see that
Yes.
page. Yeah.
So anything that has a web browser. You could use a Raspberry Pi with a touchscreen, and you have a simple control interface. And this is how the project looks. So we have one stage here that is shared via the web interface, and all the functionality is lying on these stages on the side. So we have an audio stage. We have the control for.
It feels very much like you're in a modular synth, except for controls. You got little wires all hanging down. I'm going to go from here to here.
Yes. This is the node-based connection system that Max mentioned. So you can just connect one button to another, and the first will execute the second. And this is what we do here, to have separate stages for all the functionality, for the PC control, for the audio control, for the video control, so that you can reuse the commands on the stages that we share on the web interface. One special thing that we have in this setup is that our Universe project is connected to the alarm system of the shop. So every employee unlocks the shop and switches off the alarm system. Then Universe gets a trigger and automatically starts up the whole shop. So starts the PCs, turns on the displays, starts the music, loads the preset on the X32, and the same is in the evening. As soon as the alarm system is switched back on, Universe automatically shuts down the devices in the shop. So yeah, this is one example that we did recently. Let's go through another one.
And how long do you think it took you to build that specific thing? I guess it's really an interactive thing between you and the client. You start building it out, and then you just keep on adding those pieces, right?
Yes.
Most of the time it's like this, but very often the customer or don't have any idea about what he would like to do. He would like to have control about it, but he don't tell you about what should have to be on which position or how it should look like.
Right.
It's not often that we will get a perfect asset on which we can base on which we can work on. But yeah, basically it's very flexible. So all the buttons you can arrange them and can also modify them within the process. So you need all these controls. You need a button for the lights, or you need a fader to turn the volume down. And yeah, if the customer would like to have it on his interface, it's just one click, get it visible on the interface, and yeah, so the button or the customer can control it.
Yeah, that's great. You said, and Tim, you said you had another example.
Yes. To this topic, the nice thing about Universe is that theoretically, if you have an experienced IT guy in the company, he could make changes to the project. So it's not necessary to have one of our developers on site to change a logo, or to adjust labels, or to add another display or whatever you want to switch on and off. So this is a very big project that we did recently for the Expo 2020. What you see here is we have a couple of UI stages here. These are the first stages, and then we have some background stages here. So there's another set of stages for control.
So when you think about these stages, the UI stages are things that you're going to publish out to people. They're going to look at it, and then the background stages, those UIs get tied back to the background stages that are doing all the work and figuring out all the bits and pieces of what they need to do. So there's some that you're publishing, and some that are kind of the brains of how it all works.
Yes. So the idea behind this is that if you, for example, have the X32 and you have a channel that you want to control, and you have the fader for controlling this channel on many different stages, and the channel number changes, that you only have to change this channel number on one background stage, not on all the UI stages where you are linking to the channel. So this is another project where we have.
And those black frames, those are okay. There we go. I just couldn't read them from the signs we had there. So those are buttons there for the people to hit.
Yes. These are buttons here, and this is an example where we really have a complex UI. So with different menu tabs here.
And those are taking you basically to different stages. So those are different UI stages from there.
Yes, these are different stages, and you can navigate between these stages here, and yeah, build a rather complex UI. There's another level of customizing the UI. In this setup here, we only have background images on the stages, but there's another possibility of customizing the buttons. So every button has 3 stages, which is the idle state, the hover state, and the press state. And you can load up images for each individual state. So you can really recreate any kind of UI.
Right.
That.
And and right now you have those are text, but if you wanted to design a whole button, you could make it look however you want, and then just load it as a ping or a JPEG or something like that into that button.
Yes, right. So you can build up any Star Trek interface you want for your
that is the key to the operation. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, I could build a Star Trek interface that would run the house.
Just check out our YouTube channel. So it's Universe Show Control, and they will find a video clip called "Pretty Interfacing." Check it out.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
We did a Star Trek thing. So.
That's great. Any other things you'd like to show before we jump into the questions?
Yes, maybe one other project that is more related to streaming. So maybe a bit more interesting for you guys. This is a company. They had open days where they would stream different talks from the studio they set up. And we built a universe project that would make it possible to control the whole setup with a Stream Deck. So I have my Stream Deck here. This is big Stream Deck XL. And what we basically did is we created buttons here for every talk. So we have an overview page here on the Stream Deck. This is the Stream Deck layout here. We have a button for every talk. As soon as you push the button, it loads in the names of the speakers, the titles of the speakers, sets them automatically into vMix. We have the Zoom meeting IDs. We have the Zoom meeting passwords that are set here. And thanks to a handy little tool called Zoom OC, we can interact. Maybe you have heard of it. We implemented it after we got some tickets for this.
Several.
So yeah,
a couple people said they'd like to see Zoom OSC on Universe. It's great. So you're able to grab. You're using Zoom OSC to be able to go ahead and go into Zoom and grab onto the participants.
Yes, and to start the meetings, and so every talk has its own Zoom call. And as soon as I press a button here, we switch the interface and have all the possibilities to control vMix. There was an ATEM in the setup to switch between the cameras, and all the functions you can control from the Stream Deck. So you can push this button on the Stream Deck and will automatically show the right name tag for the current speaker without having to type it in anywhere.
And so the Stream Deck essentially becomes another stage, right? It's just another place for another set of buttons, and you can keep on defining it. No, it's not.
It's not another stage, but you can put buttons that you created on a stage. You can just drag and drop them onto the Stream Deck.
Okay.
And you can also do this with faders. So you can drag and drop a fader onto this and then control the fader.
Are there other control surfaces that you interface with relatively well? As far as like sliders, can I use like a MIDI? Can I use MIDI sliders?
Yes, we had the X Touch before.
That's
so
great.
you can use the X Touch with Universe, and so the X Touch is a dedicated integration, a dedicated device, but you can also use any device that sends MIDI, for example, or you have some sort of lighting console that sends ArtNet. You can hook on to the ArtNet.
But we are also in discussions with Loop Deck. Don't know if you heard about it. So we are talking with them and try to get it in like the Stream Deck natively.
Right. That's great, fantastic. Let's jump into some of the questions and see. We've got a couple of them, a lot of them stacking up right now. So we'll go ahead and start the questions. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, next one's coming in from Jonas Dottel in Stuttgart, Germany, and he says, I was testing Universe Control this last week and I'm blown away by it. Is it possible to have a remote Stream Deck control it, or does it have to be attached directly?
I already sent him a message. We are planning to do this. We got a couple of plans for the near or for the next future, and also we would like to get a Universe satellite, where you can connect your Stream Deck and can control it via network. So this is one of our plans, and hopefully we will manage it till end of November. Yeah.
That's great. Now let's go to the next question.
Next one's in from Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Herrenalb, Germany, and he says, are you planning a Mac version?
No, not yet. Sorry. Well, there's we got this cross-platform possibility with the web interface, and we are also thinking about get more or less an headless universe, like a universe player, which is just there to to play your project which you arranged before, and therefore there's no interface, no editing possibilities, and there should be more possibilities to get this also for a Mac version, but yeah, it will take some more time. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Next question.
Another one in from Jonas, and he says, "Is NDI also being sent to the web interface?"
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We got this request a couple of months ago when everybody started starting streaming and streaming conferences. And yeah, we get a lot of projects where you can control your PTZ camera via an iPad or something like that, and got the NDI preview on your on your iPad. Or NDI features like touch controls via NDI and via the web interface. Yeah, be aware. There we got some special plans. Yeah.
That's great.
One more sentence toward this. You can also use your Stream Deck as a preview display for NDI streams. So just like I drag and drop the button onto one button on the Stream Deck, you can drag and drop the NDI device onto the Stream Deck and display it in one Stream Deck button, or you can resize it to maybe be displayed over 3x4 buttons.
That's interesting.
This is a very well common, or more or less common way for like on a theater a regisseur, right, who will get control about some scenes or got a clock there or the timeline and can skip through the cuttings, and also got a preview about whatever you would like to send them.
Right. Next question.
Next one's in from Jonas Dottel in Stuttgart, Germany, and he says, "Is there a way to sync two universe control instances for primary and backup?"
No, well, not yet. We are currently working on this issue, or more or less issue. Currently, it's you have to connect the devices with the universe. So we are trying to find a way to connect them not just to one universe, so also to another. There are, of course, ways to connect to universe licenses with each one with another. We are using OSC for that, and of course, you got the possibility to arrange like a watchdog function. If one thing went wrong on the one machine, you can skip to the other one. There's a way, but it's not natively, not that easy. Yeah.
Next question.
Another one in from Jonas, and he says, "Can the web interface be put behind a load balancer for scale and failover?"
So not yet. Currently, the web interface is hosted by a web server running on your local machine. So there's currently no way to do stuff like load balancing.
Next question.
Another one in from Fred Eric, and he says, "How deep is the learning curve of Universe? Are you offering tutorials or courses?"
Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
So Universe is designed to be very easy to learn. So what you saw me dragging the faders on the stage and adding the devices is the basics. You can do a lot with this. We have tutorials on YouTube, we have a documentation, and for everything else, for more complex logic elements or stuff like this, you can always send us a message and we will figure out how to do it.
Yeah, and the one thing that has been across the board, folks that we know that have been using Universe, is that the support is really good. So that I just want to say as a third party, that's the one thing we hear is that you're thrown ideas and things are figured out very quickly. So yeah, definitely great there. Next question.
Elliot Robinson in Las Vegas asks, how do you handle security for Universe Pro running in the cloud?
So Universe running in the cloud is a use case that we haven't had that often until now. So we are currently working on how Universe works in the cloud and what the issues will be with that. And we'll be working on this one.
Next question.
Jason Panks in Nashville asks, what protocols does Universe work with?
So there's a whole lot of protocols. We have, Max said it before, there are 200 devices and protocols that are currently implemented. There are the dedicated implementations like Watchout or vMix or the X32, stuff like this. So where you really add the device to your project, but we have a whole list of generic connectors for TCP and UDP, for ArtNet, OSC, MIDI, Serial, SSH, PJ-Link. So if you're missing something, shoot us a message. And
next question.
Jim Hankins in Chesterfield, Michigan asks, can you elaborate on the Pro feature use cases such as custom scripts?
This is maybe I'm sharing my screen once again. We have in Universe these nodes called modifiers, and the modifiers allow you to build more complex logics, like a decision where you can analyze input and execute a button or don't execute the button. We have a text modifier where you can analyze text, split text, and you can really go very far with these ones. But there are sometimes issues that you can't tackle with these modifiers. We had a KNX setup that uses 2-byte float values for temperature, and this is something that is not implemented in Universe, but you can use the script modifier here, and there we have a whole scripting interface in C# where you can really do all sorts of things. We had it in use for analyzing very complex serial protocols in one project. And yes, there are a few use cases where we are very happy that we have this scripting modifier to solve really special challenges.
Next question.
Jesse Mills in the San Francisco Bay Area asks, what differentiates Universe from other platforms like Qsys? Specifically, how simple is it to create custom control modules for hardware control where a native plugin is not available?
Yeah, well, if the hardware plugin is not available, Tim mentioned our standard connectors. So if there's a possibility to connect to with any of these, you got all the possibilities, or otherwise you have to send us a message and we will find a solution. So this is one of our if there's an API, if there's a SDK, we can control it, and if not, we will find another solution.
Next question.
Georgie Kennedy Jr. in Washington, D.C. asks, any issues running Universe on an AWS instance?
So, as I said before, we haven't had that many projects running Universe in cloud instances, but so far we haven't seen any major issues with running Universe in cloud instances.
And that's exactly what we're doing for how we're using Universe for Office Hours 2.0 is running it in the cloud. Next question.
Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina asks, can one Universe instance control other Universe instances remotely?
Yes, we have a protocol based on OC that lets universe instances talk to each other. So you can have one primary universe interfacing your billing automation systems, and then you can have like other instances of universe around and talk to this main instance.
Next question.
Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Herrenalb, Germany. He asks, what PC do you recommend for running Universe?
Basically, this depends mainly on what you're going to do with it. Universe is designed to be very, very resource saving. So you can, our recommendation is an i5 8th generation and at least 8 gigabytes of RAM and an SSD. But we had Universe running on little Intel compute sticks as well. So if you are not doing maybe 10, 20 stages with hundreds of buttons and faders running at the same time, you don't need a really powerful machine to run Universe.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Andy Carluccio in Washington, D.C., or maybe San Francisco today. What do you think of the use of Universe in this Office Hours 2.0 system? Where can we improve / explore new ideas? Maybe brief our friends on the setup.
Go ahead, Andy. You want to show off a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. And it's so nice to see our friends on the Universe side. Glad you guys were able to make it. I think this is a really cool second hour. So we are using Universe over here on the Office Hours 2.0 system to give us a consolidated and I would say a beautiful layer of control. And that was the thing that we really couldn't do with anything else that we could find. We needed something that allowed us to design a controller that we could then port to the web. And then using Cloudflare Quick Tunnel, we're able to port that to the public internet. So we put it behind a password and anybody can go into that Universe control interface and we can send them NDI, slideshows back to them underneath their buttons. We can send them, the ability to access any of the controls here in the room and things like that. Right now, the way that we're doing it is we basically just have a layout of buttons and we are sending OSC commands into the control system. And so because that's running here and it's on the same LAN, we're able to hit that, but then people can anywhere just hit the web interface to control that. So I think, some of the things I was wondering about is just like, how have you seen Universe used for decentralized production workflows? How would you recommend if we wanted to have 15 different operator stations and we wanted to have different people logged in and controlling things? What's a good way to have, a single Universe file running a bunch of different things concurrently?
Yeah, very special. Hi, Andy. Nice to meet you again. Yeah, it's well, you ask if we faced this problem often than the last time. So yes, there was a lot of more and more the people like to control their units remotely from somewhere, and we are thinking about how to optimize these workflows. Yeah, but I'm very open. Let us have a call. Let us talk about what you need. How would be the best way for you, and then we will find a common way. Yeah.
So maybe one thing, if you have different people controlling different settings on your Universe project, would be to separate this on different stages, so that you have different stages with controls over different parts of your setup, and then share these web interface to the respective
and each
operators.
stage, just to be clear, each stage can have its own URL, so that you just give someone that URL. They don't have access to any of the other any of the other stages, just the one within that one URL, unless you cross-link them within the stage, right? That's great. Next question.
Jonathan Cocatello in Washington, D.C., also maybe in the Bay Area, sitting next to Andy. How have customers used the timeline and scheduler features?
So the scheduler is a feature that's mainly used in fixed installations. So, for example, we had this brand store. In our case, we have connected it with the alarm system, but you can also use the scheduler to start everything up in the morning at 8 and shut everything down in the evening at 8. Then you have the scheduler, you have an overview of which tasks are performed on which days. And this would be the use case for the scheduler. The timeline is a feature that allows you to place buttons on the timeline and play this timeline. You can also sync this timeline to external timecode. This is a feature that you can use if you don't have a lighting console, for example, to program all your chasers and setups and an operator. Then you can use Universe Timeline to put all your presets on the timeline and play it, and then you have a timed light show that you can control from within Universe.
Next question. Go ahead, Max.
Sorry, the timeline is very often used in theaters here in Germany.
Right.
They using the timeline just for smaller actions, but if there's not a big media server in house.
So so in many ways, the scheduler is more of a global thing. Is looking at the general time of things and when you want things to happen in the real world, where the timeline is more local to that. I'm going to start this running either from a queue or from a time code, and I'm going to just start running that. And then there's things that happen along that timeline in order. That makes sense.
Correct. Well, the scheduler also got a function like called tick. So you can also set a tick so that a function could be executed every hour or every second or every minute or something like that. But yeah, mainly you describe it perfect.
Next question.
Wouter Coolvision in Bunschoten asks, is there a color picker to control light color, for example?
Yes. We have a color picker control that outputs the hex value and the RGB values, and you can use these values to link them into your ArtNet connector or your DMX connector, and this way you can use a color picker to pick the light.
A lot of discussions if we need it or not. This is why Tim was smiling.
Obviously, we need it.
Yeah. Next question.
Jason Panks in Nashville asks, any preference on using a touchscreen controller versus something like a Stream Deck?
Depends on your preference. So I don't see any disadvantages switching them. Depends
I think some
on
people
what you want to do.
Yeah, I think that sometimes when we look at that, it's a matter of the Stream Deck gives you that tactile control. You can feel over to where you want to go. Whereas the cool thing about when we design screens with a lot of other things, being able to make certain buttons larger or smaller and just kind of guide the user based on the positioning, you're not caught into a little boxes. I know that when we build things for Stream Deck, sometimes I'm stuck in these little boxes instead of being able to have a big button that says start or something like that. So.
Yes, and as soon as you want to have user input, so for example, you have an input field where you type in your speaker's name for the name tag in vMix, then you need the touchscreen interface because you can't input text on the Stream Deck.
Yeah. Next question.
Jim Hankins in Chesterfield, Michigan says, do you offer upgrade paths between standard and pro versions?
Yeah, well, not officially on our homepage, but yeah, just send us a message and we will find a solution. Yeah.
Next question.
Georgie Kennedy Jr. asks, how many machines can you load a purchase of Universe Standard on?
You are able to just activate your license once at one machine. You have to deactivate it on this machine to activate it on another one. You can use a transfer dongle for that, but you also can remember the generic number code, which is very long. But you first have to activate or deactivate it on your local machine, activate it on another one. But there's no limitation to activate, deactivate it. Yeah.
Next question.
Tell Miguel Lopez Waterman in Astoria, New York asks, Andy and Jonathan, how is Universe playing with Isadora? Did you build a custom OSC API?
So yes, but it wasn't very hard at all. Universe made it super easy. So the all we had to do was define some commands that we wanted Universe to send, and then we just had to tell Isadora to listen for those commands, and that allows Universe to basically get into the back end and control the entire brain for the entire system. So we just choose which functions inside of this big engine we want to expose to Universe. Universe just learns the syntax for those commands, and then a simple button press turns it into an OSC and on the output. So right now we have a lot of pass-through actually with Universe where, if I want to tell Mix Effects to cut the constellation to the screen share input, which is like 25, I think, on the constellation, we just have a node inside of Universe that you load in the number when you hit the button, and then you trigger it, and then it sends the OSC packet. Isadora receives that, it parses out the input numbers, sends it over to Mix Effect, sends another OSC command to Mix Effect, and out the other end. Now it seems kind of crazy to have Isadora in the middle there, because it seems like it's an additional hop, but the idea is that Isadora is ground truth for the entire system. So if anything needs to learn about anything else, Isadora knows about it at this point. But right now we're allowing, it was so easy to do. I love the way that OSC is handled inside of Universe. It really is a breath of fresh air compared to some other systems. So thank you guys.
Yep. Next question.
So easy to do, Andy says. It's funny. Can we pass keyboard shortcuts through the web interface?
Not yet.
So here's why I'm asking. So if we wanted to, for example, we have this web interface that's now ported so anybody with a login anywhere in the world can get to it. But let's say we don't want to have them using touch to interact with the system. This was Guy's idea, actually. It was a really good one. We could take a Stream Deck, ship it to them, have it plug in, and just load up keyboard shortcuts on the Stream Deck. And then the keyboard shortcut, when they're focused to the web browser, if the web browser could accept the keyboard shortcuts that we put into Universe on the back end, they would then be able to use their Stream Deck without us having to actually have a connection or pass through USB control of the Stream Deck through the internet. We would just pass the keyboard shortcut into the web controller, and then you're already using the Cloudflare connection to get the UI command back to the local Universe instance. So if there was a way for us to say that the keyboard shortcuts that we defined locally in Universe also apply to the web interface, we'd be able to have people using all sorts of hardware to talk to that controller just by emulating keyboard presses.
So maybe there is a way that you can do that already. Universe allows you to input HTML code before or after the web interface, and you could then write a JavaScript script that listens for keystrokes, keyboard input, and then use, for example, a WebSocket connector to send these keystrokes to Universe, and then listen in Universe to the incoming WebSocket triggers.
Let's talk. Let's talk about that. Yeah, cool.
That's good. That's good. Next question.
Love it. Douglas Carmichael asks, can you use the timeline to run specific cues for live music, for example, following SMPTE or MIDI timecode?
You can sync the timeline to external timecodes. It depends on what you want to do with it. But basically, yes, you can sync the timeline up to external timecode and then place your triggers onto the timeline and send out commands.
Next question.
Georgie Kennedy Jr. in Washington, D.C. Excuse me. Do you sell your own hardware?
Sorry, Tim?
Yes, we do. We have 3 different licenses. So the Lite, the Standard, and the Pro, and every license comes with a hardware that fits the license. So the Lite control hardware is a very small device that you can just throw into your exhibit at the museum, for example. And we have the Pro version, which is a rack device that you can just screw into your rack. And we have a standard model that is it's fairly small device, but very powerful as well.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, could Universe be easily virtualized on a VMware or Hyper-V infrastructure in larger installations?
Yes, you can run Universe in a VM. I think that is quite similar to running it in the cloud situation. So if you get all the networks set up, then no problem.
Next question.
Jared Cheetah in Dallas asks, Andy, how have you set up remote Universe control behind a login?
So you have to thank Jonas for this because he set it all up for us, but it's Cloudflare Quick Tunnel. And then on his Cloudflare side, he's just put in something before it directs to the stage URL. And that little interception point has an authentication where you put in an email address. It checks to see if that email address is one of the registered email addresses we know we should use. If it is, you get a 6-digit code, you put the code in, and then it advances you, it redirects you from the login page into the actual page that was exposed to the quick tunnel. Jonas set it all up for us. Next time you see him, definitely ask the specific steps there because it's really, really cool. This was a really genius idea on his side.
Next question.
So having access control on the web
Tim.
interface is something that we have on our list as well. So this is a feature that will be coming, that you can set up users and access control for different web interfaces so that you don't have to rely on your users knowing or not knowing about the URL.
Yeah, we're really excited about how we're using Universe in our Office Hours 2.0 in the sense that, we're basically abstracting all the complexity of the hardware and all the complexity of a lot of the interactions inside of a simple interface that we get to design and keep on changing. So we're constantly able to move the buttons around and figure out exactly how to configure it all. And then we're going to be constantly basically customizing those interfaces and continuing to add users, to that process, and being able to have it scale up or down based on what users are available for it. And we're really at the beginning of a completely centerless production pipeline. That is it's simple for the operator to do what that show needs it to do. I mean, a lot of times the reason that we have, I was going to try to grab my switcher, but you have all these buttons is because you have to have all those buttons there because you don't know what you're going to do with the switcher. Well, we know what we're going to do with the switcher for a given event, and being able to use Universe to build the interface for that event, not for anything that you could possibly do. The more we kind of deal with this, the more I don't want to deal with the hardware interfaces at all. I just want to have a front end for it and just go, I will design the buttons and put them where I need them to go. And then anybody can push them. And being able to reduce the complexity for the user means that we're going to be able to bring people in, have them, they're only thinking about the creative side of it. They're only thinking about, how do I want the show to run, not how do I actually do the show. And I think that's, to me, what's really powerful about the Universe interface and how the architecture works. It's very exciting. Let's go to the next question.
Next one in from Douglas Carmichael. He says, how would you manage Windows Server licensing for larger Universe deployments?
So that's another thing we are currently thinking about, how we can simplify the whole license management.
Right.
So thinking of VM setups or cloud setups, we will come up with something about this.
Yeah, well, in the next year, we are planning some innovations for this, or for the license management system, so that the user can manage, update, or upgrade his license by himself. And well, I told you before, we are working on this player solution, and this should be, well, one complex system, so you can push your project via, or to the player via this homepage. This should be the plan. Yeah.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, the default Windows 10 and 11, as I've seen, installation requires a Microsoft account. How would you build a Windows 10/11 image for Universe development/deployment that does not need a Microsoft account?
That's a good question. Until now, we have always found a way around having a Microsoft account. We have tested Universe on Windows 11 in the past, but For the insider builds, we didn't have to have an account, but we will have to see how we deal with this.
Yeah. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, could you use network-enabled MIDI tools like Bohm Network, and he has a link, to manage MIDI/IO to and from a Universe system?
Are you familiar with that network? Nope. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes. But it seems like, it's just a function of figuring out how to train it. It's not something that it can't do. It's just something that might take a little bit of extra grease to get it to work.
Yes. Send us a ticket with a link. We will have a look at it and find a solution.
That's great. Max and Tim, thank you so much for your time. We're really excited about the implementation that Andy and Jonathan are putting together for Office Hours 2.0. I think we're going to keep on showing how we're using Universe and how we're improving on that as we go down the path. But it really makes it all possible.
Thank you
We're
very
very
much.
excited what you come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for the time, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more in the not too distant future. For our producers asking the questions, great questions. This is why to find out more about apps, I just want to bring them all to the group here, because I couldn't have thought of all those questions. There's no one of us that could have thought of all those questions, but all of us can think of all the questions and really learn a lot more about the product. So it's just really, really well done for our producers that are asking them. And thanks again to all of our panelists for a great conversation and being part of the program and contributing your knowledge back to everybody. So thanks again. And remember that tomorrow's the long day. We've got education at 8 o'clock. And remember, that's not on YouTube. And then at 10 o'clock, we'll be cooking again with Damyati Gajar. In the email that went out, you'll see a link to the recipes. I'm going to go shopping today and get all my stuff. And I think I'm going to pull out 6K cameras for tomorrow's. I'm going to pull out the big guns. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. And then again, we'll be doing the Belfast method at noon with Todd Reynolds. And so I'm excited. I got a couple more cameras to Todd, so I'm excited to see what he does with them. And then, of course, we'll be taking over all of his hardware from remotely. Maybe someday we'll be taking over his hardware and then using Universe to control all the hardware. And that'll be the next step. So stay tuned for that. All right. Thanks, everybody. And now we'll